Skimming through the article, Jin-Woo jumped straight to the comment section. Scrolling down, he came across some harsh ones. His attitude is trash, one person wrote. Another commented, he already thinks he's too good for reporters. How cold. But then Jin-Woo saw a comment that made him burst out laughing. It had the most likes and said, "Look mom, I'm an S rank now." He thought it fit perfectly with the photo. Gina was shocked by his reaction. "You think this is funny?" she asked, clearly annoyed. Jin-Woo just shrugged. "But it is." Gina frowned, saying nothing for a moment. Then Jin-Woo showed her another comment that he found hilarious. She tried hard not to laugh, but her twitching lips gave her away. Gina's face turned bright red as she glared at Jin-Woo. "That's not the point," she exclaimed, crossing her arms tightly. "Why did you have to answer the phone right there in front of everyone? Now my name is all over the news." Jin-Woo shrugged, looking calm despite her anger. "Do I really need permission to talk to my own sister?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Gina huffed, her scowl deepening. "Ugh, this isn't fair," she muttered, shaking her head in frustration. Gina frowned as she tried to think of a way to argue back. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find anything wrong with his point. He always seemed to have an answer for everything, and it was frustrating. He handed her phone back. "Here you go." Gina took it, still looking upset. "Don't worry about those reporters," she said finally. "I'm fine." "Got it," he replied with a nod. He didn't seem too worried, and Gina wondered why. Then he explained. "The association told me they'll issue a restraining order against the reporters in a day or two. It won't be a problem for much longer." Gina sighed. She wasn't sure if she was relieved or annoyed. Either way, waiting a little longer didn't seem so bad. "I can't believe this is happening," Gina said, staring at Jin-Woo like she still couldn't wrap her head around it all. "My big brother is now an S-rank hunter, and reporters are practically stalking him. Most people would have been just as shocked. She'd get used to it soon enough." "I know I did." Jin-Woo tried to comfort his sister by gently pinching her cheek, but Gina wasn't having it. She responded with a quick kick to his leg. "Oh, Bowie," she yelped, hopping around on one foot while clutching the other. Jin-Woo just shrugged as she pouted at him, crossing her arms. It seemed like it was going to take a while for his sister to get used to the fact that her big brother was now an S-rank awakened being. "You're just going to keep getting busier and busier, aren't you?" she asked cautiously. Jin-Woo nodded. He had a ton of things he needed to do. But first on his list was the Demon's Castle. He'd already bought some fire-resistant gear for tackling the higher floors, which wasn't cheap. His stomach had sunk when he realized he didn't have enough money, but luckily the auction house had loaned him the cash, after he promised to leave one of his A-rank items from the system shop as collateral. "Man, I just became an S-rank hunter, and already owe money," he thought, shaking his head at the irony of it all. Sure, here's the rewritten text. As long as the items from his shop sold well in the auctions, he could pay back the loan quickly. Gina looked a bit down about it. She must have felt pretty lonely when she was by herself at home. Jin-Woo gently placed his hand on Gina's head without saying a word. In just a few more days, after he conquered the demon's castle, she wouldn't have to be alone at home anymore. He made a silent promise. "No matter what happens, I'll make sure she's safe." And then, something caught Jin-Woo's attention. His eyes locked onto the door as if he sensed something. Suddenly, he tensed up. "Jin-Woo?" Gina asked nervously, noticing her brother's strange reaction. "Go to your room," Jin-Woo said firmly. "What's wrong?" Gina asked, confused and scared. Someone had stepped out of the elevator and was heading straight for their apartment. The person had magic power, but it wasn't very strong. Jin-Woo didn't feel threatened, but he was still annoyed by this unexpected visitor. Who could it be? Maybe someone from an organization, or perhaps a fearless reporter who'd made a bold move. Either way, Jin-Woo wasn't happy about someone showing up uninvited at 10 p.m. He stood in front of the door. With his level of power, there was no need for weapons. Jin-Woo did a few quick stretches and cracked his neck. Then, just as he expected, knock, knock. Someone tapped twice, and Gina quickly rushed into her room. Jin-Woo calmly opened the door with a shriek. Through the gap he saw a guy he knew well. The man sniffled, and said in a whiny voice, "Booze." It was Jinyo, standing there with a red runny nose. Jin-Woo stared at this silly sight, and Jinyo burst out crying. "Boss, I got kicked out." Jin-Woo's dad kicked him out. Jin-Woo then noticed that Jin-Hyo was carrying a huge backpack practically as big as he was. Both of his hands were full too. I thought you had your own place.
The thing is,
My dad owns that townhouse, so he kicked me out and cut off my access to all my bank accounts.
the father cutting off his son like that.
That's super harsh. Jin-Woo had only seen stuff like that in movies. But it actually made sense coming from Chairman Yu, who was basically the richest guy in Korea. So what could Jin-Hyo have possibly done to make his dad this mad? Jin-Woo just kept staring, and Jin-Hyo blurted out nervously, "Hey boss, can I ask you something? Can I hang out here for a bit?" That's creak, chew and slam. Without saying a word, Jin-Woo shut the door and locked it. Meanwhile, Jina had been watching from her room, looking super worried about what was going down. Who was that? Someone you know? Jin-Woo shook his head. Nope, never seen him before. You don't know him. Then why did he come here? Don't worry about it. He got the wrong place. Really? That didn't seem right at all. Just then, a knock came from outside. Knock. As Jin-Woo pushed his skeptical sister back into her room, a sad voice called out behind him. Boo. Boo. Boss. Honey. Don't you think you were a bit hard on Jin-Hyo today? Chairman Yu grunted and yanked at his tie. That ungrateful boy. My Young-han was trying to hand over a super important part of Yujin Construction's future. And this is how he acts. I'm going to join the boss's guild. Jin-Hyo had said. What? Join the boss's guild? That boy deserves it. Chairman Yu snorted. If Jin-Hyo wanted to be on his own, then he'd have to prove himself, no shortcuts. Chairman Yu wanted his son to learn firsthand that choices come with consequences. But right now, he was too busy fussing with his tie to think about that. The more he tugged at it, the tighter the knot got. Finally, the First Lady of Yujin Construction stepped in. Let me help, she said with a smile. In no time, the tie was perfectly fixed. My Young-han left the tie to his wife without saying a word. She burst out laughing as she held the loose piece of fabric in her hand. Why are you laughing? He asked. Curious about her sudden giggle. She had been tying and untying his ties for years now. It didn't make sense for her to be laughing at a tangled tie after all this time. My Young-han tilted his head in confusion. Honey, are you sure you're mad at Jin-Hyo? She asked suddenly. My Young-han frowned, not understanding where that question came from. What nonsense. Chairman Yu checked himself out in the mirror. Weird. He looked kinda happy even though he was grumbling earlier. Feeling a bit embarrassed, my Young-han scrubbed his cheeks and chin. Today was the first time. Right? First time for what? The first time he's gone against you. That was why Yu was mad. Just like water flows from top to bottom, a company or a family was run from the top down. He handled his family the same way he ran his business, and no one ever questioned his decisions. Today's events had made him angry. But for some reason, he wasn't upset about it. Shouldn't I be? He couldn't figure out why he was feeling this way. His wife knew exactly how he thought and spoke softly, as if he were a kid. Jin-Hyo's trying to do something on his own for the first time. She said, why not cheer him up instead of putting him down? He stayed silent, even he wasn't sure how he felt. Finally he sighed. I'll keep an eye on him. His wife smiled, her face lighting up with warmth, as she took the jacket from him. My Young-han gazed at his wife's face in confusion. That's weird, he said. What's wrong? She asked. Her brow furrowing. It looks like there are two of your faces. My Young-han exclaimed. Her eyes widened in surprise. My Young-han stumbled, and almost fell over. His wife quickly grabbed his arm. Are you okay? What's happening? She asked, sounding worried. My Young-han shook his head hard, trying to clear the strange vision. He was breathing heavily, like he'd just run a race. His wife looked scared. Why are you sweating so much? She cried. Meanwhile, Chairman Yu was in another part of the building. He struggled to stay awake, forcing his eyes to stay open, but it was no use. Eventually he passed out cold. When he came to, he was lying in a fancy hospital room at one of Korea's top universities. One of the doctors who had been keeping watch around the clock rushed into the room to check on him. How are you feeling? Chairman Yu. Chairman Yu didn't say anything. At first. He looked around, trying to piece together what was going on. After a moment he asked, how long have I been here? You've been asleep for 2 whole days. The doctor replied. 2 days. That was unheard of for someone as busy as Chairman Yu, who who was always known for working non-stop. Even when he was really tired, he never slept more than 5 hours. He stayed quiet for a moment before finally saying, "I guess I was pretty tired." He'd been super busy, so he thought the dizziness and fatigue were just side effects of his hectic lifestyle. But the doctor's serious face suggested it might be something more. As the boss of a huge company, with hundreds of thousands of employees, he was great at reading people. He noticed the doctor's gloomy expression, and asked, "Did you find something?" The doctor's next question caught him off guard. "Do you spend much time with any hunters or other awakened beings?" What a weird question. My young Han had just asked if something was wrong. So why was the doctor suddenly talking about hunters? You looked confused. "What are you even saying?" he asked. "What does this have to do with hunters?" The doctor hesitated before speaking. "Have you heard of the eternal sleep disease?" Chairman Yu's calm face changed in an instant. His eyes twitched nervously. The room felt heavy, like a mystery was unfolding. The strange deep sleep that no one could wake up from had become a nightmare. Patients weren't just sleeping, they were slipping away fast, and their bodies were shutting down. To keep them alive, they needed special machines that used magic as power. This terrible sickness had first appeared after some weird gates started showing up. It was a heartbreaking illness that had already taken many lives, especially those who couldn't afford the expensive machines. "It starts with feeling really sleepy," the doctor explained, looking worried. "But then you reach a point where you can't wake up, no matter what." The doctor's face showed how torn he felt about it all. There wasn't a single case of someone waking up from it. Sure, you could keep them alive longer, but they'd basically be in a coma the whole time. To put it plainly, it was a death sentence. My young Han waited quietly for the doctor to finish before asking, "So what do hunters have to do with this?" Well, the doctor explained. "Many people think there's a link between eternal sleep disease and mana. Some folks were just born less sensitive to mana. These people seem more likely to catch eternal sleep disease if they spend a lot of time around it." "Didn't you say those life support machines are powered by magic?" someone asked. "Yes, but here's the thing," the doctor replied. "Magic power isn't dangerous on its own. Just like nuclear energy, the problem comes from what's left behind, like essence stones or magic gems." The doctor leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "And there's one more thing to watch out for. People with magic power." Chairman Yu's eyes widened as he thought about his grandson Jin-Woo, the only person in their family who had magical abilities. "Isn't your youngest son a hunter?" Chairman Yu. Yu's face turned red with anger at the mention of Jin-Woo. "So, you're telling me to stay away from my own son?" he asked, his voice rising. "Well, as much as you can't," the doctor started. "That's just crazy talk," my young Han blurted out, cutting him off. He waved his hand angrily for the doctor to leave. "Get out." The doctor hesitated, looking unsure of what to do, but my young Han's angry stare made him scramble out of the room. Chairman Yu glared at the closed door, his anger boiling over. "Stay away from my own son," he thought furiously. "How is that even possible, if I don't want to get sicker?" Who would say something like that to a dad? Even if it was true, how would Jin-Woo feel if he ever found out? My young Han couldn't put that kind of weight on his son. And then there's the bigger picture. Magic is becoming more powerful every day, and more people are using it. But what about those who can't stand magic? Are they being forced to leave this world? My young Han snorted at the thought. Expel him. My young Han Yu. No way. He wouldn't let that happen. He's done things people said were impossible before. When he took over Eugene Construction, it was just a small company ranked around 30th, but he turned it into Korea's top firm. Now, he wasn't about to give up because of this terrible disease. He would fight it and win. My young Han kept repeating that to himself, like a promise. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo quietly opened the door to Gina's room. It was super early in the morning, and Gina was sleeping so deeply that she wouldn't have even stirred if someone had scooped her up and carried her away. He was hit with a wave of worry. What if someone tried to mess with Gina while he was gone? Sure, most people wouldn't dare bother the sister of an S-rank hunter, but you never know what some humans might do. He needed a plan. Wait a minute. My shadow soldiers can hide in the dark, right? Jin-Woo remembered how he had sent his shadow soldiers to keep watch around the neighborhood. They were looking out for that serial killer, who was still on the loose. Jin-Woo needed to protect his sister without anyone noticing. He had the perfect plan: summon some shadow soldiers who used to guard Fang. These weren't just any soldiers. They were super muscular, even for high orcs. "Come forth," Jin-Woo said, and with a whoosh, 3 towering figures appeared in his sister's room. The space suddenly felt cramped, as if the walls were closing in from their massive presence. Why were there only 3? Jin-Woo was sure there had been 4 guards. Oh, he remembered he'd forgotten to grab the shadow of the guard. He'd smashed into the ceiling. Note to self: stay sharper next time. With a confident grin, he checked out his 3 shadow soldiers. All of them were elite-level warriors, way tougher than the regular high orc fighters. These 3 could definitely take on even an A-rank hunter without breaking a sweat. It's not just a wild guess. Cahoon, who leads the Hunters Guild Strike Squad, used to be an A-rank himself, but he had a tough time facing 3 regular high orc warriors. This trio would totally hold their own against anything thrown their way. Jin-Woo nodded toward Gina, and it was clear they were all ready for whatever came next. As Jin-Woo did, "Vroom!" The guards transformed back into shadow form and slid across the floor, blending into Gina's shadow. Perfect. He had told them to stay hidden, but to step in if anyone tried to harm her. With that done, Jin-Woo left her room and quietly closed the door behind him. Finally, he could relax. His heart felt lighter now. He locked the door on his way out and headed downstairs to the apartment building's entrance, where Jin-Woo was waiting, just as planned. "Boss," Jin-Woo greeted him with a grin. "Like usual. Did you sleep okay?" Jin-Woo asked. "Yeah, boss, I slept great." Gina was back home, so Jin-Woo found a motel for Jin-Hyo nearby. It wasn't too bad, just temporary. Jin-Hyo didn't seem to mind, which was a relief. "You're only staying here until we get the guild office set up," Jin-Woo said. "Got it, boss," Jin-Hyo replied, with his usual smile. Jin-Woo had heard the whole story from Jin-Hyo the day before, and couldn't believe he'd stepped down as guildmaster to come here. Jin-Woo couldn't believe what he was hearing. Jin-Hyo looked offended and shot back. "Why would you do that?" Jin-Woo replied. "You're the one who told me to join your boss." Jin-Woo didn't want to criticize Jin-Hyo, especially since he had turned down being guild president, just because he liked Jin-Woo so much. "Let's go," Jin-Woo said. "You got it, boss," Jin-Hyo responded with a grin. Jin-Hyo hopped into the driver's seat while Jin-Woo settled into the front passenger seat, ready to hit the road. The van rolled toward Daesung Tower, and Jin-Hyo couldn't stop sneaking glances at Jin-Woo. "Why are we here so early?" Ishii wondered, but he knew better than to ask too many questions. Jin-Woo wasn't exactly the talkative type. Jin-Hyo fidgeted quietly until the van screeched to a halt in front of the tower. Taking a deep breath, he finally worked up the courage to speak. Boss. Why are we?" "I'll be right back." What? Jin-Hyo twisted toward the passenger seat, but the van door was already swinging open. Jin-Woo had vanished before he could even react. Jin-Hyo got that strange feeling like he'd been here before. He scratched the back of his neck. This guy always popped up and disappeared without warning. "You have entered the demon's castle dungeon." Jin-Woo turned off his stealth skill, grinning to himself. Finally, he was back in a place where he could fight as much as he wanted. As soon as he stepped through the castle gates, a sharp "ee-ping" cut through the air. "A quest has arrived." He wasn't caught off guard like last time. Back then he'd received his first quest: collect demon souls 1 hus. He didn't know when, but he figured there would be more to it someday. Curious about what came next, Jin-Woo opened the message window. "ee-ping. XQ quest. Collect demon souls twins this time." Things were different. The demon monarch Balin waited on the highest floor of the demon's castle. Get ready for an epic challenge. Defeat Balin, grab his soul, and claim some awesome prizes if you win. How to start? First, finish the quest, collect demon souls 1. Then, head back into the demon's castle. What you need to do: X take down the mighty demon monarch to complete this quest. Words: a super powerful runestone. 2, you'll get 30 ability points. 3, and a mystery reward surprise. The mission is clear: beat the demon monarch. Jin-Woo's eyes sparkled with excitement as he read the details. A big smile spread across his face, ready for whatever lay ahead. He could head straight to the top without having to go back down. And here's the kicker: the rewards were awesome. 30 bonus ability points. The last quest had been a crazy amount of work, forcing him to collect 10,000 demon souls for just 20 ability points. But this time, the system was hooking him up with 30 points for defeating one single demon boss. Talk about an upgrade. Usually getting that many rewards would take Jin-Woo 10 daily quests or 6 levels up, so this surprise made him smile big time. But wait, what's this super rare rune stone? Jin-Woo picked the first reward, and hupping, a message popped up. Shadow Exchange Rune Stone. If he crushes it, he might get a special skill just for his job. His eyes went wide with excitement. Could he really learn an awesome new skill? Jin-Woo had already unlocked 3 amazing job skills: Shadow Extraction, Shadow Storage, and Monarch's Domain. Each one was pretty cool in its own way, so he couldn't wait to see what new power he'd get next. What'll it be this time? Jin-Woo thought excitedly. He tried to pull up more details, but the system wouldn't spill the beans. It only showed him the name of the skill. Jin-Woo pursed his lips thoughtfully. Well, I guess I'll just have to wait until I finish the quest to find out more. The rewards were pretty awesome: special skills and an extra 30 points. Even without knowing what the mystery reward was, it all sounded super tempting. He really wanted to rush straight to the top floor right away. But, hold on a second, he thought. For the first time in ages, Jin-Woo opened his stat screen. It popped up with a quick kenting. Here's what it showed. Unname. Unad Jin-Woo Song. Uns class. Unsoernes. Fortunex 8. Unsoert. Unsoert. Atuert. Unsoert Tame Adversity. And one other title he hadn't unlocked yet. Unsoert. 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 Unsoert Tense. Unsoert 1025. Unsoert Tentuert. He-Tenduert. Intelligence. 1890. Perception. 12 Tuert. He had no ability points left to spend. Unsoert Tensuert. Unsoert Tentuert. Unsoert Tense. Unsoert. 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 2. Stealth LV2. Ruler's Hand LV. 2. Unsoert. Unsoert. Exclusive skills. Unsoert. Traction LV. Unsoert. Scourgent LV. Unsoert. 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 Craft items. Unsoert. 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 Kicked gear. Unsoert. Crimson Knight's helmet. Unsoert. Unsoert. Entoert. Unsoert. 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 And his recent focus on boosting intelligence had paid off. It was almost at 2,000. His MP had even crossed the 5,000 mark. Mana was mainly used to bring back his shadow soldiers as many times as he needed, but with their numbers growing all the time, having 5,000 of them might not be enough. Every second Jin-Woo wasn't battling felt like a wasted moment. He shut the stat screen and got ready to focus on what mattered most. Jin-Woo was standing on the first floor of Demon's Castle, but he didn't need to climb all the way up. He'd already unlocked every floor up to the 76. Without wasting a second, he zoomed straight to the magic teleportation circle. A message popped up. Floors 1 through 76 have been opened. Where would you like to teleport? Comms. 76. Jin-Woo shouted without hesitation. In a flash of light, everything around him disappeared.